Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping straight into something pretty intense.
Yeah, we're looking at those absolutely critical 107 days.
Right, that period when almost overnight the sitting vice president became the presidential nominee. It's a wild story.
And we're really fortunate because our main source here is the person right at the center of it all.
Exactly. We're digging into the book 107 Days, which is written by Kamala Harris herself. Simon & Schuster put it out in 2025.
And it covers that whole whirlwind, from the second Joe Biden announced he was withdrawing right up through Election Day.
What grabs you immediately is just the speed of it all. I mean, it's less a campaign and more like a political sprint, right?
Totally. 107 days is nothing in presidential politics.
So our mission today is to unpack that. We want to pull out the key strategic moves, the moments where things almost went off the rails behind the scenes.
And the personal side, too. The sheer pressure of trying to launch this massive campaign while still, being vice president.
Yeah, for you listening, think of this as a masterclass in crisis management, happening at the absolute highest level of government.
So where do we start? Ground zero, July 21st.
135 days before the election. And the book makes it clear this wasn't some planned meeting in the Oval Office.
Not at all. It paints a really vivid picture of the vice president's residence, the Naval Observatory, very domestic scene.
She describes herself literally in sweatpants. An old Howard University sweatshirt, actually, just finished exercising.
Yeah, half hour on the elliptical, apparently. And then making breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, sausage.
For her nieces, right. Amara, who was 8, and Leela, 6. They were visiting before school started.
So you've got this scene. Kids doing a complex jigsaw puzzle on the floor. Parents upstairs packing. Just a normal, quiet Sunday.
The calm before the storm, literally.
And the storm arrives, according to the book, at exactly 11 minutes past 1 p.m. The secure phone rings.
The one with the blocked caller ID.
Which she notes only one person ever used to call her that way.
The president, Joe Biden.
Calling from Delaware, Rehoboth Beach. He was insulating there, had tested positive for COVID a few days earlier.
And she mentions his voice sounded off. Hoarse, tired, distant, she says.
And he just drops it. No preamble. I've decided I'm dropping out.
Wow. Just like that.
She asked if he was sure, apparently, and he just said, I'm sure. I'm going to announce in a few minutes.
And his reason wasn't his health, the COVID.
No, that's really key. He told her it was political. He said, it's the only thing anyone is talking about, and it's too much.
Too much pressure.
Yeah, he mentioned another letter was coming from Democratic members of Congress on Monday, basically demanding he step aside. He felt the campaign couldn't function under that weight.
What's so striking reading this part is her immediate private thought. Almost comical if it weren't so serious.
The sweatpants moment.
Exactly. She thinks, give me a bit more time. The whole world is about to change. I'm here in sweatpants.
And the two people staffing me right now are under 4 feet tall. It's such a human detail.
It really underscores that disconnect, doesn't it? The expectation that leaders, especially women, are always camera ready for anything.
Absolutely. Global crisis meets Sunday morning reality. No time to process, just react.
And her only immediate command was to the kids. Go get your parents.
The switch flips instantly. From aunt making pancakes to potential presidential nominee, brutal.
So let's rewind just a little bit, because this didn't come out of nowhere. The catalyst was that debate performance, right? July 27th.
Yeah, the book goes into that. She watched it, she says, not just as VP, but with her prosecutor's eye, analyzing the physical evidence almost.
And what did she see?
She saw him walk unsteadily onto the stage, trying to balance himself with these robotically moving hands, as she puts it.
Which she connects to his known issues.
Right, the neuropathy in his feet. Made worse by that fractured foot he got playing with his dog. And apparently he was stubborn about not wearing the prescribed orthopedic boot.
So the physical struggle was obvious to anyone watching.
Oh, definitely. She describes watching it with a few staff members in LA in this freezing cold conference room, just watching it unfold live.
And then afterwards, the campaign spin machine kicks in.
Oh, yeah. Talking points arrive from the comms director, printed out, all emphatic. Joe Biden won, all caps, highlighted.
Citing the cold he had as the reason for the performance issues.
And this is where Harris draws a line. A really critical moment for her own credibility looking back.
What did she do?
She basically threw the paper back on the table, said, don't feed me bullshit, refused to go along with it.
She knew people wouldn't buy it.
Exactly. She references that Richard Pryor joke, the one about the cheating husband asking his wife, who are you going to believe, me or your lion eyes?
Right. She realized insulting people's intelligence was political suicide for her long term.
Precisely. If she'd gone out and tried to sell that narrative, denied what everyone saw, her own standing would have been shot.
So what was the alternative strategy? How did they recover?
It was smart, actually, a pivot. Acknowledge the reality, but reframe the stakes.
How so?
She basically said, look, the performance was concerning, we saw what we saw, but then immediately shift to the choice in November involves extraordinary stakes.
And leveraging her own position.
Yes. She pointed out there's one person on that stage who has the endorsement of their vice president, and that's Joe Biden. Use the crisis to highlight her connection to power and refocus on the Trump alternative. Very tactical.
Okay, so Biden makes the call. He's out. Chaos ensues. But there was some preparation, wasn't there? This wasn't completely from scratch.
No, and this is fascinating. The book introduces her brother-in-law, Tony West.
The lawyer, chief legal officer at Uber, high up at DOJ previously, very sharp guy.
Extremely sharp. And according to Harris, about a year before this crisis, West had started putting together a contingency plan for this exact scenario.
A whole year earlier. Wow.
He apparently called it malpractice to be unprepared given the political climate. He saw this possibility.
So when the call came, they had a playbook. The red file, she calls it.
That's right. It was sitting there, ready. And it essentially mapped out the first crucial 24 to 48 hours.
What was in it?
Things like lists of the first 25 world leaders to call, the first 25 political allies, logistics for the transition, a step-by-step guide for the immediate aftermath.
So that dining room table, which moments before was set for a family meal,
instantly becomes mission control. A boiler room, she calls it. Staff rushing over, still in workout clothes apparently. Binders, notepads everywhere, making call after call.
trying to lock down support for the Chicago convention.
Exactly. And the book gives us a real peek into how the party establishment reacted. It's quite revealing.
Let's talk about the big names, the Obamas.
Supportive, she writes, which is obviously crucial. But they wouldn't put a finger on the scale right now. Cautious. Calculated, maybe?
Interesting. Contrast that with the Clintons.
Totally different reaction. Bill was apparently so relieved and offered to go anywhere, do anything. Hillary was thrilled and wanted in immediately, wanted to be part of the war council, ready for a fight.
That generational difference in approach is stark.
It really is. And then you had the immediate endorsements rolling in, key figures.
Jim Clyburn, hugely important in South Carolina.
He was all in right away. Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, pledged support. He saw her as someone who could maybe peel off some Trump voters.
Chuck Schumer, Senate leader.
Confident, he believed they'd win with her leading the ticket. So, some strong initial backing.
But not unanimous. There were dissenting voices pointing to potential problems.
Definitely. Bernie Sanders piped up pretty quickly, urged her to focus on the working class, not just abortion rights. You see that ongoing tension within the party right there.
Nancy Pelosi, the former speaker.
Her reaction was interesting. Sad about Biden, of course, but she also stressed the need for a process. She said, we have a great bench, suggesting maybe a mini primary, not just an anointment. Worried about party unity, perhaps.
That must have added another layer of pressure, all these different signals coming in.
Immense pressure, which leads to this really grounding moment she describes, amidst all the frantic calls and political chaos.
She paused everything.
Yeah. She stopped to pray with her pastor, Reverend Dr. Amos C. Brown. A civil rights figure marched with Dr. King.
And he offered some powerful words.
He used the Queen Esther analogy from the Bible, told her, you were born for a time such as this, linking her personal moment to this historical, almost ordained duty.
She writes that it brought her to tears, centered her.
A moment of spiritual grounding in the middle of a political hurricane. Seems essential looking back.
Okay, so the initial shock is over. The nomination is basically secured through those frantic calls. Now the work really begins, defining herself as the candidate.
And she leans heavily on her experience, makes the point that really the only true training ground for president is being vice president.
A job she'd been doing for 3.5 years at that point.
Right. She felt she knew the job and could do it. That underlying confidence was there.
It's interesting, though, she pushes back on the idea that this was some lifelong ambition.
Yeah, she says being president wasn't on her list as a kid. The idea only really clicked, she claims, years later when Lawrence O'Donnell, the commentator, suggested it on TV while she was a senator.
Sort of an external suggestion sparking the internal possibility.
Maybe. Or maybe just how she frames it now. but it suggests the path wasn't always clear in her own mind.
She also gets very real about the extra burdens women face in these high-profile roles. This section really stood out to me.
The style constraint, as she calls it, it's powerful.
She talks about the time sink, right? The necessity of spending extra time on hair makeup.
And the complicated apparel choices, like pantsuits, which she frames as pragmatic, easy to move in quickly, but still subject to endless commentary.
It's a double bind.
Completely. She says women are judged if they look too plain, or too stylish, frivolous, and all that time and energy spent worrying about appearance.
Is time not spent on policy or strategy? It's a tax, essentially.
A political capital tax just for showing up as a woman. She makes that point very forcefully.
So how did she launch the campaign message? What was the core thesis?
It was built squarely on her background as a prosecutor and as Attorney General of California, framing herself as a fighter for the vulnerable.
Protecting people.
Exactly. She listed her record, taking on sexual predators, drug cartels, predatory banks, those for-profit schools that scammed students, setting the stage.
For that killer
A
line.
line that defined the launch, I know Donald Trump's type, delivered with that prosecutor's edge.
Can she back it up with specifics about him?
Yes, not just rhetoric. She pointed to his actual record, his legal liabilities, being found liable for sexual abuse, the Trump University fraud settlement, that infamous meeting at Mar-a-Lago.
Where he basically told big oil executives he'd gut regulations for $1 billion campaign donation.
Right. She used her history to frame him not just as a political opponent, but almost as a defendant, someone whose pattern she recognized from her career. Very effective framing.
While all this is happening, launching the message, dealing with the fallout, there's another massive clock ticking.
The VP selection.
With an absolutely brutal deadline. How long do they actually have?
The book says 16 days total from Biden's withdrawal to the Ohio ballot deadline on August 6th. But by the time they really got started on the process, it was down to just 11 days.
11 days to vet and pick a running mate for president? That's insane.
Completely insane. Which explains the intense secrecy needed. Enter Operation Veep in a Jeep.
Right. Tell us about that. How did they manage the logistics?
Her social secretary, Storm Horncastle, was put in charge. The challenge was getting potential VPs in and out of the Naval Observatory residence without the press corps noticing.
Which is usually crawling with reporters.
Exactly. So Storm managed to find a vehicle with really dark tinted windows. And crucially, they started using an alternate entrance and exit to the residence.
One that hadn't been used regularly for, what, 20 years?
Something like that. It threw the press off the scent, allowed them to bring people in under the radar for those critical interviews.
Did she seek advice on this monumental choice?
Yes, she talks about leaning on the Clintons again. Bill and Hillary's advice was interesting.
What did they say?
They urged her to pick someone who wouldn't disrupt the campaign's energy, they use the phrase joyful energy, and to prioritize genuine compatibility, not just a political calculation, a marriage of convenience.
Find someone you can actually work with.
Yeah, and Bill specifically mentioned Al Gore. Said Gore was good because he knew things I didn't know. Emphasized finding someone with complementary skills and knowledge.
So who are the finalists that emerged in those last frantic days?
The book gives us insight into three main contenders. First, Josh Shapiro.
Governor of Pennsylvania. Polished, popular, proven winner in a must-win state. Seems like an obvious choice on paper.
Very obvious. Compelling guy. But there was a snag, according to Harris.
What was the concern?
During the interview, she says he expressed a desire to be involved in every single decision, to be in the room constantly.
Potentially stepping on toes.
That was her worry. She told him directly, a VP isn't a co-president. And she writes that she thought, my VP can't be one. She feared his ambition might lead to friction, internal conflicts, a potential red flag for the top job.
Okay, so Shapiro had that downside. Who else?
Mark Kelly,
Yeah.
senator from Arizona, different profile entirely.
Right, former astronaut, military background. More moderate.
Yeah, seen as pro-business. Representing a key border state, he was willing to call the migration situation a crisis. Plus, they shared this interest in space policy, the Artemis Accords dealing with space junk.
So, policy alignment, different geographic appeal. And the third.
Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, and he came across very differently from the others, apparently.
Thought so.
More self-deprecating, almost. She says he openly admitted, I'm not a good debater, and I've never used a teleprompter. Very candid.
And his background was much more kind of Main Street.
Exactly. Farmer, factory worker, National Guard, football coach, social studies teacher, a real cross-section of middle American experience.
What drew her to him specifically?
His perceived authenticity. She writes that he reminded her of the people she grew up with, plain-spoken, grounded, fundamentally decent. She saw his unique political value there, which was
Empathy. Connection. She felt he wouldn't just represent the people not typically in the halls of power, but he would actively notice who was missing and know how to connect with them. So in a campaign needing to win back working-class voters, especially in the Midwest.
Walz's ability to connect, that perceived authenticity, seemed more valuable than Shapiro's polish or Kelly's specific profile. It was a strategic bet on connection over conventional political assets.
A bet on shoring up the base and reaching voters who felt left behind after the Biden era seemed to stumble.
Precisely. It was about rebuilding that coalition, and Walz seemed like the person who could help bridge that gap.
Now, the book doesn't just focus on the campaign launch. It also delves into the difficulties she faced as vice president, even before Biden stepped aside. These dynamics clearly impacted the campaign later.
Oh, absolutely. She talks extensively about this watch the VP presumption, this constant underlying suspicion that the VP is always maneuvering for the top job.
Made worse, presumably, by her 2019 primary debate challenge against Biden on busing. That moment lingered.
It definitely lingered. And she argues it fostered this toxic zero-sum thinking among Biden's senior West Wing staff.
The idea that if she's shining, he's dimmed.
Exactly. Which meant, according to her account, that her own team often felt undercut or unsupported by the president's staff. They'd talk her down during crises or fail to push back hard against negative media narratives about her.
Could you give some examples she raises?
Well, there were those recurring stories about her office being chaotic, untrue, she insists, but damaging. And then that utterly bizarre episode where Fox News accused her of using a fake French accent when she pronounced the word plan.
Oh, I remember that. Ridiculous.
Completely ridiculous. But she notes the White House didn't forcefully defend her, didn't use its platform to swat down these silly but corrosive attacks. They just let them fester.
And meanwhile, she's given these really tough assignments, like the root causes of migration from Central America.
Right, the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, a politically thankless task. But she frames it as a role she created for herself, building coalitions.
And she claims she actually had success there.
Significant success, according to the book. She details initiatives that led to investments creating 70,000 new jobs in the region, connecting millions of unbanked people to financial services. Real, tangible progress.
But the story didn't get out.
That's the frustration she highlights. The White House leadership, she writes, slow-walked the release of this good news, kept the success story untold for months, while she continued to take the political heat for border issues. It suggests they didn't want her getting credit, even for administration wins.
Wow. But then, on the flip side, there were issues where she did take the lead, where Biden seemed hesitant.
Reproductive rights after the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade is the prime example. She writes that Joe struggled to lead forcefully on that issue.
So she stepped into the void.
Immediately. Launched a national tour, holding roundtables, rallying activists, building a coalition focused on that outrage.
Which arguably had a real impact in the midterm elections, defying historical trends.
Many analysts believe so. She took that crisis and effectively weaponized it politically, showing leadership when the top seemed unsure. It demonstrated her ability to connect on a deeply resonant issue.
The campaign also had to navigate incredibly complex foreign policy, especially the Gaza war.
Yes, and she stresses how difficult that was, trying to hold on to the complexity, the nuance, the history.
When the public conversation often demands simple, binary choices.
Exactly. Holding two tragic narratives in mind simultaneously, as she puts it, is politically very hard, and it created friction.
She describes being confronted by protesters, despite her own background, coming from parents who were activists.
Right. Took her to demonstrations in a stroller, she says. But she faced that intense chant in Detroit.
Kamala, Kamala, you can't hide. We won't vote for genocide.
How did she respond to that directly? It was blunt. A calculated risk, maybe?
No.
She looked at them and essentially said, if you want Donald Trump to win, then say that. Otherwise, I'm speaking.
Drawing a direct line between protest votes or sitting out and a Trump victory.
Acknowledging their anger, but forcing them to confront the stark electoral consequences. You might not like me, she's basically saying, but the alternative is far worse for the causes you claim to care about. Pure pragmatism.
She also details a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. It didn't go well.
No, she describes it as brief and unproductive, felt like he was just running out the clock. And she was particularly struck, she writes, by his denial that people in Gaza were starving.
So what did she do after that meeting?
Publicly, she walked a careful line, reaffirmed U.S. support for Israel's right to self-defense, a standard position. But then she added a crucial piece.
What was that?
She stated very clearly that how Israel conducted its defense mattered. She listed the agonizing images, dead children, starving people, and declared publicly, "I will not be silent."
Taking a more critical public stance than perhaps others in the administration had.
Yes, signaling a willingness to acknowledge the humanitarian cost, even while maintaining the core alliance. A nuanced and potentially risky position.
All of this intense pressure leads directly into debate prep for that huge showdown with Trump in Philadelphia.
And the prep sounds incredibly rigorous. They were in Pittsburgh, apparently, and actually mocked up the debate set in a hotel ballroom. Lights, temperature, everything replicated.
Trying to anticipate every detail.
They even discovered something crucial late in the game. The actual podiums were built with this steep slope. Meant she couldn't easily take notes during the debate. Had to adapt her strategy last minute.
And they had someone playing Trump.
Oh, yeah. Philippe Reines, known for his Clinton-era work, she says he played Trump as a total jerk, which sounds unpleasant, but she admits it was necessary, helped hone her responses to provocation.
What was the core advice she received for handling Trump?
It was aggressive, really. Psychologically focused, draw a smiley face on her notepad to stay centered and light. Be on offense continually, don't let him control the narrative.
And interrupt the lies.
Yes, be ready to jump in clearly and firmly and just say, "That's a lie." Cut through the noise. The whole prep process sounded like a form of high-level hazing, she calls it.
Meanwhile, Trump's attacks on her personally were escalating. Just brutal stuff.
Relentless, calling her dumb, lazy, Marxist, fascist, and the really loaded one, DEI hire.
Let's pause there. For listeners, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Using that term against her wasn't just criticism, it was a specific political attack, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was designed to dismiss her qualifications, her entire career, and suggest she only got where she was because of her race and gender, a way to undermine her legitimacy at its core.
And then the most personal attack may be at that black journalist event. You're not black. How did she process that kind of identity-based assault?
She writes about falling back on her mother's lifelong advice. "Kamala, don't ever let anyone tell you who you are. You tell them who you are." She saw Trump's attacks as distractions, attempts to pull her off message. Engaging directly was playing his game.
Just incredible pressure. And then, hours before the debate itself, she gets a call from Joe Biden.
Yeah, this detail is astonishing. He calls her on debate day. Not apparently to offer encouragement or last-minute advice for her debate.
What to talk about?
His own past debates. And to apparently voice worries about hostile power brokers back in Pennsylvania, basically making it about himself and adding to her stress right before arguably the biggest moment of her career.
That's awkward, to say the least. Speaks volumes about the underlying relationship dynamics, even then.
It really does. She writes, she just couldn't understand the timing or the focus. A really telling anecdote about the complexities of that partnership.
Okay, fast forward to the debate itself. September 10th, Philadelphia. She gets there, does the walkthrough.
Notices the actual set is smaller than the practice one, and makes a conscious call not to get bogged down in the pronunciation of her name. Decided it would sound petty or bitchy, as she puts it, focus on substance.
And the debate starts confrontationally.
Immediately, Trump gets asked about his felony convictions, and his response is to call her a Marxist and insult her father. Standard Trump deflection.
But there was a difference this time compared to the Biden debate.
A significant difference. The moderators actually stepped in. They fact-checked Trump in real time, particularly on his false claim about Democrats allowing newborns to be put to death. That intervention mattered.
Then came that truly bizarre moment, the eating the pets tangent.
Oh, yeah. Trump bringing up some wild conspiracy theory from Laura Loomer, a fringe figure. Harris describes looking up in just sheer incredulity, just baffled by the absurdity.
But she used that moment.
She pivoted brilliantly. Used the shock of his comment to land her counterpunch on policy. Pointed out that Trump had personally killed the bipartisan border bill because, quote, he would rather run on a problem than fix a problem. Turned his weirdness into a substantive attack on his governance.
A strong performance overall, by most accounts. She even notes Trump himself seemed to acknowledge it.
Right. They ran into each other the next day at a 9/11 memorial event, and he apparently said to her, "You were great last night." The ultimate backhanded compliment, perhaps, from her opponent.
So, strong debate, good polls, Momentum seemed to be shifting, leading into election night, November 5th. The mood was optimistic.
Extremely optimistic, according to the book. Their internal data showed narrow leads in key battlegrounds. External polls looked good, too. She mentions pollster John Ralston having them up in Nevada, the respected Seltzer poll showing them leading in Iowa. Surprisingly, confidence was high.
And then reality hit.
Hard.
Like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
The first sign something was terribly wrong came via text message to Tony West.
A friend working inside the Fox News decision desk, their election night war room, hours before any official calls.
And the text predicted.
A Trump sweep. Said North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona were all going Trump's way, and Pennsylvania was leaning heavily toward him, too. Catastrophic news.
How did that change the mood?
Instantly. From cautious optimism to, as she describes it, chaos, disbelief, and just crushing despair. The bottom fell out.
She describes her own private moment of realization.
Yeah, it's raw. Sitting on her bed, the reality sinking in, struggling to breathe, asking her sister and friend, just utterly devastated, oh my God, what's going to happen to our country?
Sheer grief.
Palpable grief. She writes about going downstairs and finding her sister Maya and her friend Chrisette just openly weeping. They had to send Cedric Richmond over to Howard University where the victory party was planned.
To tell everyone to go home.
Yeah, quietly. The dream was over. Just like that.
But the duties didn't end with the loss. 2 days later, she had to go to Howard.
And deliver a speech. Not the victory speech they'd planned, obviously, but a speech of uplift. She made a point, she says, of stripping out all the negative Trump language. Said it was not the work of this day. No pity party.
And then, the hardest duty of all.
Presiding over the Senate's certification of Donald Trump's election victory. The ultimate act of democratic ritual and personal discipline.
She notes the historical context.
Yeah, joining Richard Nixon and Al Gore as the only VPs in history forced to certify their opponent's win. She writes it took every ounce of poise and self-discipline she had, upholding the oath, the process, even in defeat.
In the aftermath, reflecting on it all, she mentions words of consolation from Minion Moore, the veteran strategist.
Moore told her, God gave you a beautiful 107 days to reclaim who you are. Framing the campaign itself, win or lose, as a kind of personal rediscovery or reaffirmation.
But that personal reflection is set against a much bleaker assessment of the state of American institutions.
Yes, the book ends with a pretty stark warning. She sees the guardrails of democracy buckling. Systemic failure across the board, judicial, legislative, media, even corporate America.
She calls out specific examples of media failure during the campaign.
She does. Points fingers directly at powerful media owners. Jeff Bezos at the Washington Post, Patrick Soon-Shiong at the Los Angeles Times, accuses them of ordering their papers to kill planned endorsements of her candidacy.
Pre-capitulation, essentially.
That's the implication, that powerful institutions were bending under pressure, pulling their punches, failing to stand up. She found that deeply alarming.
And she mentions the 60-minute settlement, too.
Yes, after Trump sued CBS over a story, she quotes Dan Rather calling it a sellout to extortion, sees it as another sign that media outlets are becoming vulnerable to legal intimidation, chilling investigative journalism and factual reporting, undermining the whole system.
So given this sense of institutional decay, what's her proposed path forward?
It involves rethinking everything, building a new blueprint for governance and campaigns, leaner, swifter, much more efficient, moving beyond nostalgia for old ways.
And looking towards the future generation.
Critically, yes. She makes a powerful call to invest massively in Generation Z.
Why Gen Z specifically?
Because she sees them as uniquely forged by crisis. They've lived through the pandemic, climate change anxiety, social media toxicity, school lockdown drills. Their resilience, she argues, makes them the future. She advocates for investment on the scale of the GI Bill for them, give them the resources to lead.
It's a mix of institutional critique and forward-looking hope. But the very end of the book comes back to something much more personal.
It does. Despite the loss, despite the systemic worries, the final anecdote is about human connection. A restaurant staffer named Michelle Kazi.
What happened?
This woman approached her, didn't have paper, so wrote a note on the back of a menu.
And the note said,
It praised Harris for how she handled all the adversity with a smile, a laugh, and level-headedness. Said she hoped to become someone similar.
Wow. So after everything, the politics, the policy, the loss, it's a comment about her character, her composure, that provides that final moment of affirmation.
Exactly. It's a striking ending. Suggests that maybe, in incredibly polarized times, how you carry yourself under pressure resonates just as much, if not more, than specific political wins or losses.
So wrapping this up, 107 Days really paints a picture of this incredible whirlwind, a collision of crisis, personal ambition, running headlong into these crumbling institutional barriers. It just shows the unbelievable speed and pressure involved in that transition.
And it highlights that constant, exhausting tightrope walk for a female candidate especially, balancing the scrutiny on everything from pantsuits to tone of voice with the demands of brutal political warfare. You really feel the loyalty, but also the burnout of her close circle, Doug Emhoff, Maya Harris, Tony West, the whole campaign team.
Which leaves us with a really provocative question to think about, doesn't it? If those traditional pillars of democracy, the media, the political establishment, seem to be wobbling, maybe even failing under pressure, as the book suggests, what's left? What's the bedrock?
Is it possible that the kind of personal resilience and character Michelle Kazi observed, that ability to maintain composure, that level-headedness under fire, is actually becoming the most crucial, maybe even the only truly reliable political currency left? Is sheer comportment now more durable than policy when everything else feels like it can be twisted or weaponized? Something to definitely chew on.